Hiya folks, coming from a new place with a new setup today. This is going to be pretty quick hopefully, but I wanted to go ahead and jump in. So this week we're going to talk about the text of Tituba, as promised last week. However, I also want to get into some of the racial biases and racism and xenophobia and anti-Semitism that surrounds the American and British idea of witches, especially as it was formed in the late medieval and early modern periods. Just so that we can kind of get a little bit of background on racial context going into the witch trials, and then sort of deal with the racial implications that Tituba herself is facing in the novel. So we're going to start talking more about African, African-American, Afro-Caribbean, and Latinx perspectives and traditions next week and through the rest of the semester, especially as you get into Juju the web series, which is our next text for this course. By the way, you should start watching that this week. The episodes are really short, 15-20 minutes, and they're all available on Amazon Prime. The first one is also available on YouTube. Okay, so, as we've already discussed, in literature and in culture, nothing exists in a vacuum, right? Archetypes and stereotypes come from somewhere and often reflect the different biases and personal, political, cultural agendas, usually not always of the people or groups in power. And that can be different groups. These groups can be in tension with each other. Life is complicated, politics are complicated, and they've kind of always been complicated, right? So, in medieval and early modern England, people in power. Catholic Church, and then the Anglican Church, as well as the ruling class, like your royals and your nobles, and later into the late medieval and early modern periods, a powerful and influential merchant class as well. So we've already talked about how women who were able to live their lives independently and decrease their dependence on these patriarchal power structures by earning their own livelihood or by taking charge of their sexuality were more at risk for being vilified as witches, right? However, I have done you a disservice by not emphasizing that at different times, different elements of European, and for our purposes specifically British, witchy archetypes and aesthetics can be linked back to xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and racism. In the Middle Ages, race is complicated. But a lot of the ways that we think about race now can kind of be tied in medieval Europe to a lot of what we can think of as racial categorization today, and the discrimination that comes along with that was based on religious difference in medieval Europe, medieval Britain. So while many Jews and Muslims, those are the main two that you're going to see in medieval Europe, though there are others, participated in medieval British society, early modern society. They were there. They were often othered and endangered due to religious and cultural differences. People have always been people. So, it's no coincidence, for example, that Loathly Lady's loathliness in some of the texts that we've read are characterized by a lot of the same features that you see in racist caricatures and portrayals of Jews and Muslims from the period. Dark skin, large crooked noses. There's an association with really aggressive and rampant sexuality as well, with the Loathly Ladies and with witches, and often with these othered groups, because again that threatens that patriarchal, dominant Christian power structure. So, some of the characteristics that were often used to identify the witch trials, which, as we know, stems directly from early modern and medieval ideas of what it means to be a witch, were therefore based in racism. However, not around the homegrown, colonial, and American brand of racism with which we are familiar today, right? So in Tituba, the novel, and as well as in the historical trials, Tituba's racial and cultural differences from the other Salem residents definitely made her more of a target for suspicion and persecution for witchcraft. We see this in the novel when she talks about how the residents of Salem keep coming to her and the other black people in the village for spells and curses, and how her accusers seem to believe that her blackness signifies her closeness with the devil, and therefore her evil nature. However, as is pretty clear in the book, the methods, characteristics, and activities that the prosecutors in the witch trials were looking for were not the same methods, characteristics, and activities of the Afro-Caribbean tradition that Tituba in the novel is working from. So in Tituba, like in Circe, there's a big preoccupation with what the name witch means. Towards the beginning of the novel, I think when she meets John Indian, Tituba can't understand why the word witch would be a bad thing, when she's considered her spiritual power and the abilities and insights that it gives her to be a gift. And that's how how Mama Yaya has taught her, right? So when you get into the Salem witch trials, the novel kind of talks about her sort of consciously performing the witch as her prosecutors were expecting to be, this like European, early modern witch. And it isn't until after she returns to Barbados, at the end of the book, that she finally gets the respect that she expects from the beginning from the Maroons and the Rebels. And then she has all this power at the end of the novel as sort of this rebellious spirit of Barbados, right? Becoming like one with her island. So, going forward, I want y'all to think about the differences between how Tituba describes her witchcraft and her spiritual life, and the ways that witchcraft have been portrayed in texts like Macbeth and like in the witch hunting manuals y'all looked at last week for the supplementary texts. In the next few weeks, with the exception of our brief Halloween jaunt into Hocus Pocus and Kiki's Delivery Service, we are kind of going to be moving out of my usual area of study. So I'm going to be working to provide y'all with resources and research about hoodoo, voodoo, and other African, African-American, Afro-Caribbean, and Latinx magical traditions, as is like relevant for the rest of the semester. But I want y'all to know ahead of time that like this is not my area of expertise, and I don't want to claim in any way that it is. So we will be learning kind of along together in this way. Yes. Your supplementary text for this week heavily inspired this lecture. It's a video from dress historian Abby Cox, which I know, like, dress historian's kind of weird, but it's exploring the history of the witch hat, the conical black witch hat that you think of, and it was a really insightful, like, well-researched video. It's pretty long. Don't feel like you have to watch it, but I recommend it. I enjoyed it. Okay, so I hope y'all have enjoyed Tituba as much as I did. I really totally tore through that book this summer when I read it, and I am looking forward to hearing from y'all about that and about Judo the web series. And as always, if you have any questions or concerns, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. I will be back in town next week, so my responses still might be a little slow, but I will get back to you. So if anything comes up, shoot me an email. I hope y'all are well. Hope you're having a good day. All right, bye.